Start the meeting.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Dahl. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Craig?
Here.
Mr. Hayden?
Here.
Mr. Giuliano?
Here.
Mr. Nuss?
Here.
Mrs. Ranzan?
Here.
Mrs. Steele?
Here.
Mrs. Stoll?
Here.
Mrs. Whitty?
Here.
Mr. D'Agostino?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Would you please join me in the flag salutes?
I just want to double check everybody can see the flag, correct?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of the Act, the Sussex-Wantage Regional School District Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the school building and notice of said meeting sent to the New Jersey Herald and the Star Ledger.
The Sussex-Wantage Regional School District is a responsive, caring, child-centered community. Our mission is to educate each individual to be a competent, lifelong learner and productive, responsible citizen by providing challenging opportunities in a safe environment through a partnership of families, schools, and communities.
All right, at this time, I believe we're going to move into a short executive session. Can I get a resolution, please, Mrs. Reichner?
Yes. Whereas pursuant to NJSA 10-4-12B, the Sussex-Wantage Regional Board of Education may exclude the public from that portion of a public meeting at which the board discusses any of the matters described at NJSA 10-4-12B 1 through 9. Now therefore be it resolved that the Sussex-Wantage Regional Board of Education shall enter into closed session to discuss budget and personnel matters. Now therefore be it further resolved by the Sussex-Wantage Regional Board of Education that pursuant to NJSA 10-4-13B, the time when and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in a closed session can be disclosed to the public is when the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
All right, looking for a motion, please.
I'll
I'll
motion.
make a motion.
All right, and looking for a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 This will be about how long, Mr. What do you think, 20 minutes? 15 minutes?
Yeah, I would say anywhere from a half an hour to 40 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Gall, your camera's off due to signal. Yeah. Are we back in public session?
Mr. Kronsky, can you confirm for us that we're good?
Yeah, it's streaming. Yep.
All right. Well, we are back in public session. At this time, we'd like to move on to the report of the superintendent of schools.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to begin by kind of touching on some of the highlights of the various committee meetings that we had prior to this board meeting. We hosted virtual meetings for community outreach, curriculum, special services, facilities, policy. So just to touch on some of those community outreach, we've had a lot of great ideas going into this virtual cycle, and I just kind of reviewed them with Mrs. Stoll that we're kind of at in a waiting period, that we had to put on some of our more dynamic things like the invitation to students to engage more in board meetings and shadow. Not that we can't do it in a virtual setting, but you know that the pandemic has kind of taken us again and just put us in a holding pattern for now, and some of those large scale functions that we wanted, if that's correct, right, Mrs. Stoll?
Yes, that's correct.
Talk a little bit about curriculum and special services. In curriculum, one of the areas that we debated, and the folks who are on that committee can kind of weigh in, and you know, we love to hear from the other folks, is grading during marking period number 4. So we gone back and forth with Francis to ascertain like what are the regulations that we can follow. So, you know, one of my ideas in talking with the administrators, engaging some of the teachers, was the notion of, you know, how do you adequately grade kids in a fair manner with this, you know, virtual home instruction process. So the idea came back as a pass-fail, not with the intent of, you know, failing kids in mass, but rather to compensate for parents and students who are having challenges at home. And during the committee discussion, some very valid points were raised about, well, yeah, I think everybody wants to help those folks, but in the other extreme, you know, how do you recognize the kids and the families who, you know, are working really hard, want to earn a grade, that sort of thing. So I'd love to get the board's perspective on that. One of the ideas I'd seen floating around in another district that you could potentially model ourselves after is the idea of just offering it as an option to folks who feel like they need it, rather than the administrators and I trying to figure it out what's best for everybody. Just put it out there as, if you think you need this, and you want to talk about some of the circumstances that you have going on that might be relative to that, you know, we can afford that option. So I'd love to hear what you think.
Vernon's doing that. They are giving the parents a choice, and they gave it to a certain date, which was Friday the 24th. And if their situation wasn't as good as others, they could take a pass-fail. But there's numeric grades on that. Pass would be a 75, fail would be a 55.
Did you say 55, 55?
55 for failing and a 75 for passing. These are kids that might need, you know, they might have parents that have lost their job, that have become sick, may not be as motivated as others, and it's just a safeguard, I think. Instead of getting that 0, it gives them that 55. So if you've done really well.
Is there a state mandate? Is there any kind of state mandate on this?
No, you know what, the things you kind of hear from the state on a whole variety of issues is they, you know, it's a local decision.
Okay. I agree with Colleen. You don't know what's going on in anybody's house.
And you have kids that, are still on honor society and want to get that good grade and are rocking the home remote learning. However, there are kids that, special ed and 504 that are not receiving their modifications or, not as much as if we were in school. So.
But there are
And
no,
if we give those, I'm sorry, go ahead.
there are no guidelines that we've been given yet as far as that goes, because I thought that
No.
DOE came out with something.
I think the DOE came out as pass fail. I don't know if Francis has any information on that. But,
Nothing official has come across my
Yeah.
desk yet.
okay.
Actually the NJEA had come out with kind of an advisory document for their membership that, basically touched on the points that we discussed in curriculum or just discussed right now is how do you balance, that scenario, assess people fairly, how do you compensate for the kids who are, going above and beyond. So I found their guidance to be kind of helpful.
I thought I had something on the 24th where, which was Friday, they had decided, the DOE had decided that K through 8 would get satisfactory or needs improvement, and high school would get letter grades, which obviously doesn't affect
I
us.
think that was New York.
But I'm not sure. There was also something where it was going to be like they were going to do regular grading, but the final result would be that. I just wish that it could be consistent, no matter what it is.
But this, but families aren't consistent. I mean, we're all dealing with
pandemic right now.
I mean, currently there's still some numeric grades, and there's P's in books, and the P's that are in the books do calculate to be at 100%. I know that because there's other numbers in the books, and we need to come up with something consistent.
Yeah, so I think we can modify the P to define it as we see fit. And obviously, if the DOE came out with something that said, this is what you're going to do, I mean, that's what we're going to do.
I kind of wish they would.
Well, we
Yeah,
also can't micromanage. Like if there's no guidelines and there's, that's not our job to micromanage the teachers or their perspectives.
Amen.
If there's no guideline to follow, that's not our job to intersect ourselves into that position.
I
Well,
also think that if they were going to do it, they were going to do it by now. They would have done it by now. We're entering Vernon's in week 7. I think they would have come out with some sort of guidelines by now. They want to do district by district.
right, and I wasn't trying to micromanage. I was trying to ask as a board member and a parent for consistency. Dorothy, I
understand that, but it's not up to us in the classroom. That's where it lies on Michael and Christine, or Michael, to come up with that. It's not up to us to decide what that number is.
And hey, listen, my perspective is I like to engage you folks in the process, right? And actually, in this regard, we would have an agenda item for the 13th that would seek to approve what we're doing.
Okay.
Okay? And you'll have ample time to review it and ask questions if necessary before that time. Facilities, we had, opening bid, which is on the agenda for your approval. Parking site location at Wantage School is phase 3 of parking lot project. New bridge at West. Catch basin was repaired at Lawrence School. We'd previously had a ramp, a handicap ADA ramp for Sussex Middle School in the budget. Then we had it out of the budget. Now we're going to present it back in the budget. Couple of the challenges that are coming up for discussion that we talked about in our facilities meeting, but also, that come up in the superintendent circles and the principal circles are just thinking about your roadmap to reopen, or even before that, you have faculty, staff, students have, leftover items in lockers, and how can we best develop a process to where we don't expose anyone to unnecessarily, but, facilitate getting them back their items. So we just discussed two possibilities of bagging them up, which comes with challenges. We talked about the possibility of would we be able to let people in on a kind of scheduled basis to retrieve their own items. I think a lot of it kind of comes down to what we hear from Governor Murphy's office about if and when school will reopen, or if and when some of the guidelines may be loosened up. I had heard today that I think parks may be opened up. So it seems like
State parks are open and so are golf courses.
Yeah, so I mean, so maybe there's some trending. I mean, I know those are outdoor activities, but maybe there'll be some trend where, some of the restrictions will be eased up in the near future on a gradual basis, that we may be able to look at and take advantage of.
Okay.
And then in policy, we talked about a whole host of items, some interconnected to the whole aspect of the pandemic that we're facing, what to anticipate. And everybody wants to, have kind of a concrete idea of what you're doing, what you do, whether it's a politician on the news, a governor, a local superintendent of schools. And it just feels like nobody's really in a position to give any concrete information as of yet. So we're all trying to collaborate and brainstorm. Are we going to have to, entice substitute teachers to come on a larger scale into our district? Do we need to look at other policies relative to our substitute program? Trip insurance for the future, what that would entail. You'd gotten some information about when we had saw that this coronavirus had first hit the United States on the West Coast. I had called Shane right away and said, listen, I don't know what's going to happen here, but you need to look at what are our options for insurance for DC. And to their credit, we had the literature reviewed by both Francis and our insurance person. And even though they didn't speak to one another, they both came back and said the same thing, which was that you're not going to be covered. You're basically going to have parents, spend additional monies on this, and it's totally foreseen that you're going to cancel this trip, so you're not going to be covered. So the question becomes is, as we do more things in the future, we need to look at insurance. Talked about the idea of, more negotiations topics. I'm not going to elaborate in too great deal in a public forum, but looking at ways and strategies that we can develop plans of action going into negotiations. Talked about reviewing curriculum on an ongoing basis to make sure our tools are consistent. Talk about vertical and horizontal articulation are the fancy terms, but making sure that's intact. And that, if you recall, was a mission of, transitioning from Mr. Higgins to Mr. Linsky, and now from Mr. Linsky to Mrs. Stimulakis. We'll pick up with that. It was in the process of picking up with that until, our world was changed. Talking about the guidelines for public meetings and social distancing. We talked about stipends, which we can talk more about in the future with Francis in more of a confidential setting. And now I'd like to transition to the presentation of the budget. So if you can give me a minute, I'll be pulling that up. And can everybody confirm for me that you can see the American flag?
Yes.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can.
Yes.
Thank you. So this is a presentation of the Sussex-Wantage Regional School District 2020-21 budget. I'll talk to you a little bit tonight about an overview of goals, how goals have evolved, a little bit about instruction and programs, some facility enhancements, and some budgetary items. And like Mrs. Riker said, she had included a updated slide of any modifications that had occurred. So, as you can imagine, as you've all talked to me about, we're kind of shifting our focus now to, and I think it's a positive thing if you track the news media and what's happening in the discussion basis. We went from, a month ago, 2 months ago, everybody talking about the notion of closing schools to now where people shifted the conversation to how do we begin to prepare to open schools, which I think is a very positive thing. But, how do you prepare for that? I copied the board, if you recall, on Friday on a kind of roadmap, which doesn't necessarily delineate, but rather a map or process to go through to decipher what you're going to need, what you're going to need to do. And obviously that'll be governed by NJDOH, NJDOE, CDC, presidential guidelines. So we're looking forward to getting more and more of those out. I know Governor Murphy had come out with, I think it was a 6-point plan to reopen. One of the things we're thinking about now, in particular, what are we going to have to do with our facilities? We've brainstormed, everything you see on the news about, our school schedule is going to need to change, and social distancing. How do you accommodate and that in schools? And I got to tell you, it's going to be inherently challenging. We will do the very best we can, of course, to follow any parameters. But I've gotten the nurses involved in our roadmap, so they're also waiting. Every major organization is kind of developing these plans as we speak and these ideas as we speak. So, it's kind of a work in progress, so to speak. Then, you're preparing for how do we enhance the delivery of instruction? Should we need to do this again? Some things that we're beginning to talk about that I didn't highlight in curriculum because we'll highlight them now, but, assessing students, reassessing students, where are they at? What tools do we have? And what can we do either before leave for the year or probably more like when we return, and having teachers meet students where they're at, getting the tools. And one of the items that we talk about in our curriculum portion is the reading series, which I think will be very meaningful to Lawrence School. Mental health and wellness. I know we all really care about the kids and their families, and is there a way we can help support them in that regard? Any additional materials we need? I got the department heads looking at, Mr. Petrowski, for example. To what degree will we have to enhance the supply list for a normal school operation of, how much hand sanitizer we need, how much disinfectant we need, and how we will be able to obtain those things. So those are things that we're all putting together, and we'll continue to enhance as we move forward. How do we keep stakeholders with a mentality of feeling safe? You see, again, on the news media, how certain areas of the country or countries apart from us preparing or beginning to prepare for students coming back to school. Not saying that this is what Governor Murphy is going to say, but, you see in other countries, they're wearing face masks, they're doing temperature screenings. How will we facilitate those? And how do we set a mindset and a tone that your child's safe, well cared for, and healthy in that environment when it will probably be very disconcerting for parents. Continuing to, and I can't understate this, we had the task of consolidating 2 administrative roles, and I want to make sure that our curriculum consolidation is continued to be supported. That's a dynamic role where you're wearing several hats. So that's a goal of mine, is to continue to support that. And preserving our current infrastructure. You all know we're participating and are in very challenging budget cycles. And how do we preserve what we have in moving forward? So instruction and program, and we talked a little bit about this, about the curriculum highlights, just maintaining continuity of program, remotely or brick and mortar. I think it's an area that we're thrust into, but we need to continue to enhance. I said horizontal and vertical articulation, which means, you want to rely on teachers' expertise to have the flexibility to make adjustments in their lessons and their instructional strategies, because ultimately they know what works best for their students. But also you want to have alignment in the practices and the instruction that they're receiving, both, across the common grade level and as students move up, building upon what they learned the prior year. And this year, we have for your consideration in the budget, piloting and eventually adopting a new reading series for Lawrence. So one of the things I think you all have heard, probably anecdotally, staff down there, is that although reading and writing workshop is a remarkable instructional strategy, through my conversations, having been half the year as a principal with the folks, is that they would prefer a more narrowed focus, regimented type program, which an anthology or a new series would do, that they feel like reading and writing workshop doesn't necessarily provide to the full extent. So facility enhancements, things that we completed this year. You may recall we did the SMS hallway ramp with the new rubberized tread, which came out very nice. CEL front paving project. This really enhanced the overall period of traffic flow, parking. We have the yellow barricades, we have the bollards, and enhanced security. Now, I know you can see in the left-hand picture, there's several security features there that we had installed and enhanced. Signage, So it came out very nice. And one thing I also can't understate is the flow of water during rain. The number of those basins were replaced. The one where the cone is currently positioned in front of those yellow bollards, that was a hazard, and it's been totally repaired and looks great. CEL cafeteria improvements. We note the pictures of the various machinage that we were able to obtain. There's the outdoor freezer, which is located in the back of the building. PA system upgrades, as you know, these are also tied to security features, with 2 of our schools having total enhancement. I really got to credit the board with this project. All the administrative teams, Mr. Kronsky's crew, Mrs. Riker's crew, they totally overhauled the wiring, the infrastructure. The third building, which is a more contemporary structure, built more recently, didn't do that, but we still added on the security features. And it's been a great asset. I think will be a great asset continuing to move forward for a long time. Future and projects anticipated to be completed. The Lawrence School water well system. Again, we reported out on this before. There's nothing wrong per se with our well water system, but I think this is more proactive in nature. That we've had experiences where the power has gone out, and then we have to continuously have the water tested. The water pit, although in compliance when it was made, is subgrade. And as you move into the future, if we were to redo the project, they wouldn't let you have that. So we have our engineers and architects, again, to the board's credit, working up plans to all new equipment outside, pulling it above ground. Some of the criteria that we had for them, and I know it's challenging, but obviously you want a high quality drinking water, but also how can we sustain the water pressure in the building or the power in the absence of power, so that we didn't have to go through a protocol of, having our water tested beyond what we normally have to have tested, and kids not being able to drink the water. So they're very confident that they can come up with that plan. The other thing that's worked positive for the project, from my discussions and our discussions with the architectural firm and the engineers, is that we were very concerned, when you do these big scale projects, that, very often you have to have them done over the summer. And if, you don't hit the ground running right away, then the project's delayed, and you're biting your nails to make sure you get the project in before school starts. But from what these folks have said was that we can continue to run off our current system while they build the new system, and then set aside an ideal time where we can switch over and there'll be no disruption expected to the school building. So that's very positive. West paving project, Mrs. Riker could talk a little bit more about the bid process, but for those of you who don't know, who weren't part of the planning, and I had happened to be a part of it when I was principal over at West for many years, the parking lot is currently, we had multiple phases. We did the front, we did the basketball court area, we did the rear of the building, and this end of the building towards the south on 23 by IPE, crane operation there, the playground essentially. You can see from the images that we, over a decade now, they continue to patch those. And so this is the third phase of that project. And included again in this budget submission, which was updated, is the potential ramp for handicap accessibility leading down to Sussex Middle School's, for lack of a better word, play area, basketball area field. I'm going to ask Mrs. Riker to take over the items, and I'll click for you, Mrs. Riker.
Sure, that sounds good. So just as a reminder, we know that we're in a period of years of decreased state aid. This year we lost $651,000, which is significant. We can go to the next slide, Mr. Gall. Looking forward, This is the projected state aid reductions through the budget years 25, 26. So the first two columns, you could see the actual state aid loss and the original projection. So last year we were really close. This year we actually did better than what was originally projected. But going forward, you know, over $800,000 in next year in the future year's budget, another 800,000 in the 23-24, and then it'll start to decrease with $500,000 and about 162,000 in that final year. But I think we've all talked about this. The budgeting going forward is going to be extremely difficult, and we try to be cognizant of that when we prepared the budget. Okay, Mr. Gong. So every year I have this slide that talks about the where the money comes from. And with the reduction of state aid, the local tax levy will just continue to increase while the state aid number is going down. So this year, the local tax levy is 62.5% of our budget, which is about almost $17 million. State aid is about 27.8. 6.3 million or almost 6.4 million. We're utilizing surplus again this year, over $1 million. Capital reserve with those projects that Mr. Grohl talked about, those are being funded by capital reserve. That's $1 million in this year's budget. We've always done a good job of putting excess monies every year in a capital reserve, and while these budgets continue to decrease, that's going to be harder and harder. So but we do have the money this year, and we will be doing those two projects, those two big projects that Mr. Gold talked about. And then we just have some smaller numbers. We get a semi-reimbursement. We get transportation revenue by utilizing our bus drivers to do 3 routes for High Point, shared routes. They do them in the morning before they do our own routes. You know, that's a plus. That's almost $90,000. And we get extraordinary aid. That's aid based upon our special ed population. And then just miscellaneous interest income, E-rate monies, and those kinds of things. So the total budget revenue is $25,915,202. And the distribution of funds. The two big categories are usually employee benefits and regular instruction. This year, the cost of employee benefits is the largest expenditure in the district, almost $6 million, and it's 22.7% of the budget. And you can kind of look at these other ones. Regular instruction is $5.6 million. Special ed instruction is a little over $4 million. Operations and maintenance of plant is $2 million. Student transportation is $1.7 million. And then, you know, the other items are smaller, but that's how the distribution of funds is. You know, 44% of our budget is regular instruction and employee benefits. Okay, Mr. Gould. So I usually don't have anything in the budget presentation about health benefits, but because this year is such a significant increase, I just wanted to talk about it. Based upon our loss ratio, we were asked to budget a 30% increase. When it all actually came in, the actual increase for medical premiums was almost 41%. And the prescription, which is a separate plan, was at 16.34%. So the overall increase from last year to this year is, a consolidated 36%, and it's $1.5 million increase in this budget. You know, coupled with the state aid loss, this was a big challenge in the budget. Okay, Mr. Gall. So taking a look at why that happened, and just looking, excuse me, at the PPO portion of our health benefits, which have the most employees in it, our loss ratio for the 2019 year, which is what they look at when they build their renewals, the red line going constant through is the premiums that we paid. The other line is the amount of claims that they paid out. So we gave in $2.2 million of premiums for our PPO plan, and they paid out over $4 million in claims. So that was 179% loss ratio, which is why we're getting the increase that we are getting this year. And in fact, when we shopped our plan, the 3 other carriers that normally quote us declined to even quote us because of this loss ratio. So it's a difficult situation for us to be in. Okay, Mr. Wall. So from the tentative budget and the original and the budget documents that we recently sent out, there's some changes that have been made for this final budget. Personnel wise, there is a reduction of 2.5 FTEs. That is not rehiring 2 retirement positions, and a reduction of 1 full-time employee to part-time. So that's the 2.5. For instruction, as Mr. Gold talked about, we're adding back that K-2 reading series. Field trips, we are adjusting and providing an alternate 8th grade field trip. So adjusting some of those budgeted monies to at least, make an effort to provide some kind of trip for the next year's 8th grade. And facilities, as Mr. Gold also talked about, we added back that ramp walkway to the fields in the middle school. So all of that we've talked about, the changes that we've made and what you had already received, it ends up being a 6.43% increase. So we are utilizing a portion of the bank cap, but not all of it. We will lose some of the bank cap this year. What that means for Wantage, on the average home assessed at $260,716. Wantage is getting a 5.35 overall increase, $1,386 a month or $166.32 estimated school year increase. And from last year to this year's budget, the regional allocation shifted to a lower number for Wantage. They were 90.68% of the tax levy last year, and they're now 90.32. And ratables increased slightly, and the average home assessment increased slightly. For Sussex Borough, the average home assessed at $179,974, it equates to a 10.86 overall increase, $19.31 a month and $231.67 on the school year. And again, the opposite of Wantage, their allocation increased 0.36% to 9.68% of the total levy. Ratables decreased, and the average home assessment increased slightly. Okay, Mr. Gold? And then we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, Mr. Gall, are you all finished up with your presentation?
Yes, sir. We do have some audience remarks that Mrs. has.
Could I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, sure.
I didn't. What was the budget documents in our packet were a little different?
Yes.
What was the amount reduced?
57,000. I want to say 57,345. 57,654, and the changes were adding back the reading series, reducing the 2 retirements, reducing that full-timer to part-timer, and adding the ramp back in, and making changes to the 8th grade field trip. So the change is 57,654, which the original document that came home to you is a 6.8% increase, and now it's a fourth rate.
Do you have the numbers of the impact to the taxpayers of both Sussex and Wantage?
From last time to this time?
Yes, from the documents we received on Friday to what this document says today.
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
It went down like $11 a year.
Yeah, so the document that you received this weekend, it was 1962 and now it's 1931, and it was 1429 and now it's 1386.
Mm-hmm.
1386. Thank
So
you.
if you look at the whole school year, it went down $11.18.
Yep.
16 cents. For Wantage.
Are there any other questions?
The impact on the
I
class
actually have one.
sizes.
Sure. Go ahead, Mrs. Craig.
I just had one question about that 57,000. Where does that go?
I'm sorry?
That 57,000 that it was reduced by.
The budget's been reduced, and it reduces the tax levy to the taxpayers.
I think she's
Right,
asking
but
where
you said
the
that
bank's cap goes.
reduction- Right, that 57,000, where does that go?
For bank cap that we haven't used? I mean, what was the bank cap that we didn't use?
Right.
Like, that's what you're asking.
Well,
Right,
the bank cap,
57,000 that
right,
we were reduced. What happens to that?
the bank cap that we are not using, we will lose this year.
Okay, so my other question was, with the budget the way it was before, we were using all that money, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So $57,000 is just going wayward with the wind. Gone.
yes,
We lose it.
yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Hayden, did you have another question or comment?
Yeah, with not renewing those two staff members, how does that affect class size?
Yeah, so we're just not replacing two retirees. And by last count, the highest class size that scenario would impact would be raising the class size to, I believe, was 28 on average, you know.
And where would that hit? Where would that class size? Would that be in the middle school?
Yeah, memory serves that's third grade.
Okay, I thought it was.
And what was the number before for class?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say 3 or 4.
I think you just said that the class size, the highest class size is 28, and that'd be in third grade, right?
If memory serves, yeah.
Okay, but the teachers that are not being replaced under the new thing here are fourth grade and fifth grade teachers. So, you know, and to answer Mr. Hayden's question, I don't know if 28 is the right number for that, because the highest class size we have is in third grade at 28.
You could hire someone who can go into that third grade. If there's a lot of kids in the third grade, you hire someone to be a third grade teacher.
You
It doesn't
go
have-
where the section is the highest.
Yeah, you don't have
You
to
replace it and the section is the highest, correct, Colleen?
Yeah,
Correct.
replace the fourth grade and fifth grade. It has to do with your certification.
Yeah, and as the cohort of kids moves every year, you know, there'll be a bubble. Like I've had bubbles at West, you know, that the number was huge. And then as that bubble moves through third grade to fourth grade to fifth grade to sixth grade, that goes, you know, and the class sections follow that. That's where you need to expand or contract.
And where you have to really think about is that, you know, when we return, if we return in September, there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to be behind academically, socially, emotionally. And so, the budget, the way it was, I liked it because it did give us that flexibility to hire teachers so that when we have to target kids that are academically behind because of this pandemic, that we were going to be given teachers to help bridge that gap. And now that's no longer going to be there.
Well, and Colleen, with that rationale, does it not also, if we had that opportunity, does it not also leave it open to, this is not a 1-year fix. We're looking at 5 years of this. If you look at the budget presentation and what we all went into this with, that there's also room if we had it for later.
Yes.
So if we kind of take it out now, we kind of don't have that room for what you're talking about, that if we need to help those kids that are struggling, then we also have the flex side of, there's another place to go, because there's really not a place to go for the next 2 years. You can't look at this budget as a 1-year fix. You got to look at this budget over the next 5 years of what we're going to go through.
Correct.
Are we on the same page with that, Colleen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, I'm just going to come straight out and say it because I'm not going to postpone this any longer. I think that we have a lot of extra teachers already in the class, in the hallways that are not teaching. And if we need teachers for counselor and that kind of stuff, there are a lot of teachers that we pay a lot of money to that do hall duties. We all know.
You have to have.
That's beyond your purview. That's up to Mike. That's beyond your purview.
You can't. You have to
That's
have.
called micromanagement. It's beyond your purview.
Right.
That's up to Mike.
I'm a taxpayer, and if I know that there's adult teachers that are getting paid to sit in hallways, and you want me to hire more, I have a little.
Our contract, Dorothy. We have to do staff duty. We have to do hall duty. That's per our contract. And so, yeah, we might be sitting in a hallway, but we're trying to make the hallway safe. We might be standing in cafeteria duty, but that's for safety and security.
And that's also a contractual issue. That's part of their other requirement. That's beyond your purview.
Correct.
Yeah. If I could just interject too, I think some of what Mrs. Woody's referring to is to some degree complicated by certifications and needing to have certain personnel to instruct certain classes. And as time goes on, those schedules will be revised. They're currently in the process of being revised for future implementation down the road. I don't want to get into too much detail because that would be more executive session type stuff.
Well, and it also goes into, with each budget cut we get, we lose more and more and more. It's not just about this year. We have to look for the bigger picture. And those are things that are beyond us. That is not our job to do.
Right. Last year, I was told about the bigger picture. I was explained about the bigger picture because I was new to the board last year, and I was explained things that would have to be because of this year, and they didn't occur that way. And actually, you even tried to explain it to me yourself, Jenny, and none of those things are happening.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, it's the opposite. You want to hire more.
There's a lot happening. We just lost $651,000. There's teachers we're not replacing where there's numbers going up. And next year it's going to get that much worse.
We knew that we had
It
a
is
cap.
happening.
We knew that we had a cap last year, and we knew that there was going to be cuts. And I was told things a year ago by several people of how this whole cutting teacher thing works. And none of that has happened. So now,
What do you mean cutting?
You don't get to decide who gets cut, Dorothy. That's not your job.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying that we could have worked harder on the budget, is finding different ways. I'm not even talking necessarily about cutting teachers. There's different ways of cutting back in the budget.
I think
this discussion is kind of heading now towards more of a debate of the actual resolution
Yeah.
and questions regarding the presentation. So I think maybe we can use this time to answer any questions specific to the content. And then if there's any debate or conversation related to the resolution, it can be addressed then.
Okay.
Perfect.
Are there any more questions on the presentation itself?
No.
All right. So as Mr. Gall said, we're going to move on to.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Mrs. Riker, exactly the difference in estimated taxes per month wattage is going to be what? From what the original presentation was that was delivered to us on Friday. Today, Friday it was 1480. And what is it today? Because I don't have the document.
Okay, on Friday in your budget packet, it was
$14.80.
well.
And now it's 1386.
Mrs. Riker, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The document that I have the copy that I have in the packet, I wonder if that's not the right one here.
Yeah, I have the old one. You can just tell me what you have on the new one.
So the new one, Mr. Hayden, I brought the new one up on the screen again, if you could see it.
Yeah, I'm doing this from a phone. So I have
Yeah, I know what that's like.
1386. And
Yeah.
on the
Hold on 1 second. Let me look at something.
I have it on the screen, Mrs. Riker.
Yeah, no, that's his current one. I'm looking for the other
I think Mr.
document.
Hayden,
I have
think
that.
Mr. Hayden has that. He just
Oh,
didn't.
you have that. Okay.
Bless you.
So we're saving the people in Sussex Borough like $7 a year. And in Wantage, we're saving them about $12 a year. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
All right, at this time, we'll move on to audience remarks. If you
Mrs.
haven't
Riker.
yet, yes, go ahead, Mr. Gall.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Riker has a note to read from Mr. Getler, I believe, Mr. Riker.
And I just like
yes,
to.
I'm actually right, and as Francis talked about, Mr. Getler sent in William Getler, 98 Gemmer Road, Wantage, New Jersey, sent a lengthy letter. I'm going to summarize it, but I will give you all a copy of his letter so that you have it in the packet this week. So Mr. Getler, the summary is that he submitted a statement requesting that tax increases of any kind are eliminated this year. He also expressed concern over the holding of virtual meetings and questioned our authority to do so. He also requested that the board notify him when we would be holding in-person meetings instead, as is his constitutional right. But again, I will give you, it's a much lengthier message, and I will give all of you a copy of that.
Thank you, Mrs. Riker. Are there any other comments that were sent to the email, Mr. Gall, that we have at this time?
Yeah, so I'm going to read one from Miss Jennifer Forsyth. It notes, I live at 15 Northfield Drive, Wantage, son in pre-K program. I was wondering if tuition will be reduced. She goes on to depict some personal circumstances regarding how the coronavirus has impacted her family, her child, and why a reduction in rate would be welcomed for her and her family. So I can reach out with Mrs. Wilson directly to her. I know she's consulted Francis on this already to some degree.
All right. Any other comments?
Thus far, we have just received another one from a Sharon McCullough. I don't have an identification for average. Basically goes on to, I'm sorry, for address. Basically, after tax hike at HP last night, coupled with SW's tax increases, current unemployment in the state, it'd be great if the board keep these types of things in mind. Wants the community to come together. Budget is for 1 year. We have no idea what the future will hold. No one can plan 5 years at this time. Thus far, those are the only comments I have. We have a comment from SWIA that I would ask you to note for the record, Mrs. Riker, from Lisa Van Orden.
Oh, I was gonna read that in the next one, because it had nothing to do with the budget, but if you want, I'll read it now.
Okay.
This is from Lisa of Fahrenfeld. She's the SWE president and a teacher at Lawrence. The Sussex-Wantage Education Association, through Pride Grants, usually supports and funds programs for our school district through activities such as reading night and math night. Due to the school closure, these have been canceled. The money granted to us through NGA and Pride was not lost. Our committee chairs, Carol Speck and Kim Walsh, quickly worked following Pride guidelines to take that money and still use it to assist our community. I'm proud to announce that we were granted permission to use the $2,500 as a donation to the Sussex Help Center so they may stock their shelves with much needed food for people and students in our community.
So I know
That's
the board
amazing. Thank you. That's amazing.
That's great.
Yeah, I know the board would want to join me in commending the organization and Pride and SWIA for all they're doing. I know every little bit helps.
All right. Well, if there are no more audience remarks at this time, I want to remind everybody that's watching live that you could still email budget2020@swregional.org if you have a comment for the second audience remarks portion. But thank you for reading those. At this time, we will move on to the board secretary certification, please.
Pursuant to NJAC 6A23A-6.10C3, I certify that as of March 31st, 2020, no line item account has encumbrances and expenditures which in total exceed the line item appropriation in violation of NJAC 6A23A-16.10A.
Thank you. We'll move on to the approval of board minutes for March 18th, 2020 regular session. I'm looking for a motion, please.
I'll motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Looking for a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Hayden?
Yes.
Mr. Giuliano?
Yes.
Mr. Nuss?
Yes.
Mrs. Ranzan?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Whitty?
Yes.
Mr. D'Agostino?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
At this time, we will move on to the presentation of agenda items.
Well, actually, under personnel, I'm going to remove item number 1 for a later time. I'm pulling it for some revision to language. Under policy, I'd like to move items number 1 and 2.
All right.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Looking for a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion.
Was that Mrs. Ranzan seconding?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Any discussion on policy 1 or 2? All right. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Ranzan?
Yes.
Mr. Hayden?
Yes.
Mr. Giuliano?
Yes.
Mr. Nuss?
Yes.
Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Whitty?
Yes.
Mr. D'Agostino?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Under finance, I'd like to move items 1 through 11. And Mrs. Riker is going to note modifications to number 7.
Yes. So in number 7, under general fund, the total expenditures are $25,915,202. The special revenue expenditures remain the same. The total is $26,568,623. The revenue numbers remain the same in the middle. Taxes to be raised in the general fund column and the total column are both the same. It's $816,591.
Thank you, Mrs. Riker.
I'll make
All
a
right,
motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Craig. I'm looking for a second on finance.
Motion.
Thank you. And discussion on finance, please.
I have discussion. Well, let's see. On number 8. I'm just trying to figure out why is there 2 separate things there on number 8?
Well, one is authorizing the purchase of a reach-in, and this purchase will be funded by the food service account. But we generate all invoices or purchase orders from our general fund because this will be an asset. So it also is giving, we need to transfer those funds from the cafeteria account to the general fund when it comes time to pay the invoice. So it's just having both of those 2 things approved at the same time.
So is that like the whole purchase amount of 600 and change, so that amount gets switched over into the general account after you pay the vendor?
Yes, we're going to generate a purchase order after the board approves this tomorrow to order this. When they come and install it, it could be 12 weeks from now, depending upon how long it takes to come in. When I need to pay the invoice, we're going to transfer the money to our general fund account in order to pay for this so that it's paid from the cafeteria account and not the general fund monies.
Okay, I think I just lost that too, because I think you just said there's 2 funds, the food 50 and the general 10. You're going to take it from the food account and put it into the general account.
Yes.
Pay for it.
Yes.
All right. Do you even know how much the installation is, or is that just the purchase amount, or?
That's the price to buy it and install it.
That is a self-contained item,
Yes.
right? Okay,
Yes.
so there's not much installation with that.
No, actually we had 2 quotes and one company charged an installation fee and one company didn't. So this is the lower quote of the 2, and that there is no installation or delivery charge.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Petrowski basically characterized it as buying a glorified fridge for your house. They just plug it in.
Right. I guess I'm just confused as to, you have to take it out of the food account and put it into the general fund? What we can't just pay for it from the food account?
Well, we're going to record it as an asset to the district. So we're going to generate the purchase order from Fund 12 in our general fund, and we do this. This is customary because there are 2 different bank accounts. So any of the purchases that we do, we pay for them out of the food service account. And if you recall, we had to do a corrective action plan to actually bring our numbers in our food service account down, because you're not allowed to have more than 3 months expenditures. And so we did a corrective action plan to actually say that we were going to purchase equipment over the next few years and pay for it out of the Fund 50 account.
Okay.
But Christina, do I understand it right? You purchase it one way and then you pay for it another way, which is customary.
Yes,
Yeah.
Could I do it anyway? Yes, I could pay for it without board approval, but to make the transactions clean and to pass auditor muster, I'm trying to make sure that we do everything the right way by saying that the board knew that this was being paid from the cafeteria fund, which it is.
Right.
And
so my
it's not
point is
being
it bleeds
it's not being paid
transparency.
by taxpayer money.
Right. It bleeds transparency.
Yes, I like that. I try to do that.
I just want to point out,
Yeah.
Mr. Hyden just dropped from the call, so if we could wait just a second if he's going to return before we proceed.
Yeah, he says he's been knocked out. He's trying to get back in.
Okay, we'll hold on a second. Again, just as a reminder to the public, if you would like to submit an audience remark, please email budget2020@swregional.org, and we'll read your comment. Yes, Mr. Hayden is back. Is there any further discussion on finance?
Was there more that could be discussed about the budget now, or like Francis was? I'm not sure. Or
you can comment on the budget now. Prior was just on the presentation more so. If you'd like to make comments on the budget, you certainly can.
Right. I remember looking back that originally when we sent the preliminary budget into the county, I think that the number 8 was mentioned as far as there were 8 questions, I guess, that the county had, but they were taken care of. Are we privy to know, like, along what lines those questions were? I mean, what? I don't know if Christina remembers what I'm talking about there.
Oh, yeah. Well, Mr. Kramer reviews the budget, and he just little things like, for example, why did our number of students that we were receiving homeless change from one year to the next, and explaining different variances and putting lines in there, and doing like a detailed statement on our projects and capital reserve. So every year he reviews our budget, and I get he reviews everybody's budget in 2 counties, and he submits a list, and so it was nothing out of the ordinary, and it was nothing, it took me, 20 minutes to answer his questions and submit them back.
Okay. And again, I just want to point out that I received a phone call sometime today, well afternoon, saying that there were changes made to a budget. Previous to that, there was really nothing that was changed, and the changes are not enough for me, and my statement on it is really, honestly, nothing more than it's too little, way too late. So I'm definitely against it.
I'd just like to comment on the last minute changes. There was a majority of the boards that supported the previous budget, and the minds of a couple board members changed. So the administration worked with the board to come up with a budget that we believe the majority of the board may support. And that's why, the last minute change in the budget.
Well, just to reiterate, it's less than 0.5%, which, in all honesty, give and take a couple of dollars, probably, I come up with you found $57,000 difference. By the time you take away and put in and all that kind of stuff, it equates to about a $57,000 difference, which definitely wasn't enough, in my opinion.
So what was your plan, Dorothy? What would you have done different?
I don't know, Jenny, but there was plenty of time for you or others to call me before. I mean, we've had this, or the preliminary budget was what, March
18th.
So there was plenty
My phone didn't ring, Dorothy. You didn't call me.
No, you didn't call me either.
We could have had a lot of conversations, but you didn't call me.
But
So
you
I'm just asking, what would you have done different, Dorothy? I'd love to know.
I'm not sure. I'm not on that committee. I'm not sure of all the discussion that went on. And
There
stuff.
was plenty of time.
You
for
don't have to be on the
everyone to
committee.
reach
You could
out.
actually make a phone call and have the conversation.
Well, I had conversations with Mr. Gall on the very first Monday that the school was closed. All right. After the preliminary, or right before the preliminary budget was voted on, I was extended an offer to speak to Mr. Gall and Mrs. Riker. And I believe it was at 10:30, the Monday that the school was closed. Mrs. Riker couldn't be there because Mrs. Riker was handing out the school lunches. I spoke to Mr. Gall. We went over a couple of things then. Nothing was different since then, up until this afternoon.
But you voted for that preliminary budget.
You're
Everyone
absolutely
voted for
right. I did.
it.
I
And I'm
was,
going to say right now that this is the last time we're going to do a budget meeting, a budget committee. I am not doing this anymore.
I
Last
agree.
year,
I agree.
I was attacked by Bob Hyden.
Agree.
Now I'm being attacked by Dorothy Whitty, and I'm done. Okay?
Colleen, I'm honestly, I'm not.
Agree.
And hours.
Guys, yeah, one at a time.
But you never, Dorothy, you never called me, who was on the budget committee, or Megan.
Or
So-
me.
I am not trying to
Okay.
attack any one
You're
person.
just mad because they didn't meet with you. That's why you're mad. And I'm done.
You know what? Everyone knows my personality very well, and if I have something to say, that I have no problem calling anybody up. I have no problem.
Can I say something?
Yes, sure,
Yes,
Megan.
Mr. Steele.
Please, Megan.
Since the budget committee meeting started, we've met 2 or 3 times in person and then twice, I think, over the phone, maybe once, and then individually talking. It is known to everyone to reach out. Anyone could have reached out to anyone on the committee, to Mr. Gall, to Ms. Riker, who is handing out lunches for free and reduced students every single day, which is an awesome thing. And I thank you for doing that every single day for our students.
Amen.
Anyone could have reached out if you had questions. I may work usually 6 days a week, but I'm available every night on the phone. No one has reached out to me about any of this. I'm more concerned about class sizes. Class sizes. Who wants 28 to 30 kids in one class? I don't.
Thank you, Megan.
Everyone had a chance to reach out. We've been talking about the budget for months now. Everybody had a chance to reach out, but they waited until last night and this morning to do it.
Ask Mr. Gall. Mr. Gall, I'm sorry to do this, but have I or have I not spoke to you about the budget throughout the last month?
We're talking to Mr. Gall. We're all a part of a whole, Dorothy.
I think it goes back to what I said, is that the majority of the board supported the budget that we got in our packets on Friday, and there were some changes, people that changed their mind, which they're more than welcome to do. They have the right to do it, but that's why we had this late change. Prior to that, we believed that the majority of the board was supportive, since it was unanimous in March, and then nobody had said anything. I mean, and the people that did say something, and to be fair, Mrs. Woody, you did to me. I'm sure you did to Mr. Gall. You don't change a budget if you have a majority of the board supporting it and one person doesn't like it. And while I appreciate where you're coming from, you can't change a budget for one board member. Otherwise, the budget doesn't pass. That's the problem.
I just want to.
With that being said, I'd like to thank the other board members that actually brought up other ideas that I hadn't looked at, that I hadn't seen. So the other board members that you know who you are, I'm not going to call you out in public. I'd like to thank you for bringing up other ideas that I hadn't seen.
Yes.
And I think it was brilliant, and I think it spoke to the taxpayers. I think it spoke to an unprecedented time that we're just not in now, that we're in for the next couple of years. So I want to thank those board members for actually doing that, because it was brilliant. So my hat's off to you. And my phone line has been open to anybody that wants to have a conversation at any given point.
Well, and listen, if I could just interject for a minute, I don't want any blame to be placed on people for, reflecting on things and changing their mindset. I mean, I think the process overall has been challenging in the sense that we've been dealt some blows, originally by a state funding process, and then there's just this medical health insurance costs that skyrocketed based on anything that we could have perceived. Almost a perfect storm, if you will, of challenges. And you have that all done within a context of this COVID-19, which is just, you couldn't have even have seen a movie like that circumstance, and how that has impacted, our lives, your lives, the lives of the people around us. And so for folks perceiving that and reflecting on it and saying, hey, wait a minute, can we improve this process to some degree? Can we all rally around some similar ideas? And I think that's
right.
Board has always come from, at least in my experience in 15 years, having worked with, one variation or the other with the administrative team and various board members, that no matter what your perspective, at least what I feel about each and every one of you, no matter what your perspective is on any particular issue, and you disagree with each other on this item or that item, you all come at the situation from a perspective of caring about kids and caring about staff. Just have different approaches and strategies about how to get there, or what might work best. So, I want to applaud you in the process. I know just from my own family time, me being a superintendent, my wife being a teacher, who's trying to do her job with kids at home. I know the stresses of health and the demands that are placed on your family and how that's affecting everyone. And, my hats go off to you. I know it's not always a perfect, sometimes it's actually an imperfect process. Through that collaboration, I think the product ends up becoming better. And if you need to correct me on something, and, I'm more than welcome to receive that and guide that process in the future. Mr. Gregory just shot me a text and said, your recollection was slightly off. It's 5th grade that's going to be higher. But I'm going to go and talk to him about that, because, my recollection's slightly different. So, and, I get home tonight, my wife will correct me on half a dozen different things. And I didn't even know.
Can I just go on the record by saying that next year, I feel that we shouldn't have a budget committee. I feel like we should sit down as a board, so there's no questions about what the budget's about. Francis, this might be a question for you, but I think we need to meet as a whole board, because this is the second
I agree.
that
I agree.
people have people, we've got
Agreed.
a committee, and then it's go and see, and it seems like, Dorothy tried to go and see Mike and Christina, but there was, things that kind of stood in their way. I can't do this budget committee anymore, because it just seems like there's a lot of miscommunication.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. You just schedule a work session of sorts. You put it on the agenda. No action can be taken. The purpose is just really to discuss the budget.
And that's how it has to be.
And calling to the three of you, actually, I by no means against any of you. I know that you work hard. I know that you're dedicated to all the different committees, all three of you. I appreciate that, but I mean, I did have ideas, and I did try to communicate that, So
and some of what Mrs. Woody relayed is in the new budget, and it may not be the tax cut that she would have liked to see, but I echo Mr. Gall's sentiment. I appreciate anyone, anyone's opinion. All of us are here for the right reasons. We care about the kids, we care about the community, and the taxpayer. And it's rough. And the preliminary budget was approved, I remember, because Mrs. Woody told me right after the meeting there were the first 2 cases in Sussex County at that time. So from the time we had that March 18th meeting until now, the whole world changed. And it's hard. We were not given any sort of extensions by the state to have more time to discuss. But it takes a village to make it work. And I think, whether you vote yes or whether you vote no on this, I think, the differing opinions is what makes this board powerful. Even if we disagree and raise our voice sometimes, I do think, I think this is a budget that, in my personal opinion, we had to pass and use this banked cap. And so we'll see what the votes are. But I mean, we're going to get hammered the next couple of years. And if we just lose all this money that's in the banked cap, I start fearing that we're going to deliver a product to the students and to the community that's not even worth sending the kids to school for. And so I think this budget's very responsible. I ask, everyone to just appreciate the work that Mr. Gall and Mrs. Riker did, and the budget committee, of course. And, hopefully things get better when these state aid cuts are done. But it's important for the public to know, lastly, that we have this banked cap available because this board has been so fiscally conservative. in years past. And the only reason we're using it is because of the state aid cuts that the state is making. And in my personal opinion, the gripe of the public should be with the state officials and not with this Board of Education. But that's
Nick, I have to resonate with you. And I've been asking people as we've talked every meeting that when they come out and they look at us and say, why are you doing this to us? This is not us doing it to anybody. This is the state that gave us a mess to fix. And I'm asking anybody that's listening on live stream or wherever else you're listening, your fight is with the state. And not for nothing, we could use that help because this is not something that we ever thought that we would be in. So when you look at us and say, why are you doing what you're doing? It's not us. This is like a kick the can mentality. So I'm asking anybody that's got an issue, go to the state and ask them why they're gutting us because it's not reasonable. It's not rational.
The only distinction I want to make for folks is, and I'm not getting political here, but in my opinion, in the circles I travel in, I just want to make a distinction between the local state officials, in my opinion, have always been strong advocates for Sussex County. That's not, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. D'Agostino, that's not what you're referring to.
Not at all. I mean, I think the state officials do the best they can to represent us and do a fine job. I think that this is coming down from, people even above that. And, again, we're not going to get political, but they certainly listen. When I reach out, they certainly care. And I know the other board members have reached out before as well. And, it's a mess, but it's something that we're going to get through together. And I think personally that this budget helps preserve the district and gives us a chance. That's my opinion.
Well, again, I was told something different last year and pretty much the same story, and it didn't pan out for this year. And so
that's why next year when we sit together as a board, we can, you won't be in the dark. And so things that you said would happen this year, you have a say, because I feel it's a whole board process, not just 4 members.
Agreed.
Doesn't help this year.
Does anyone else have any comments on finance? All right. Seeing none, do a roll call, please.
Could I just ask first who seconded? I have Mrs. Craig motioning.
I believe I did.
Okay, thank you. It's hard not seeing everybody. Okay, Mrs. Craig?
Yes.
Mrs. Whitty?
Items number 1 through 6, yes. Item number 7, no. Items number, items number 8, 9, and 10, yes. And item number 11, no.
Mr. Hayden?
I'm going to vote yes on all. Regretfully, I do want to thank the Budget Committee for their work. Regretfully, we are engulfed in a situation here that no one could have foresaw between March and now. And I have had many conversations with Mr. Ball about how we're going to have to proceed. I don't know how we're even going to proceed with this budget, because next year we're going to have a lot of changes, personnel, facilities. We're going to have to make purchases in order to provide a safe and efficient education with our kids. And we're not going to do it for less than what this budget gives us. But I vote yes on all. And I'm sorry to the taxpayers of Sussex and Wantage, especially the ones who are going through a financial crisis due to what's going on here.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Mr. Hayden. Just said yes on everything. Okay,
yes,
thank you. Mr. Giuliano.
Yes on all. Thank you to the Budget Committee. And I believe that with what's been going on with the crisis, that our backs are to the wall, and we did the best we could, given the circumstances, and no extensions granted, and so on. So thank you, and yes to all.
Thank you. Mr. Nuss?
I'd like to echo that. It's a yes to all for me, and I do want to, thank the committee for, having an open line of communication and an open ear, and it is very difficult, and I just wish everyone the best of luck, and I just like to think that we'll get through it, and it's budget.
Thank you. Mrs. Ranzan?
It's a yes for me. Watching the High Point Board of Education last night, one of the board members said something that really hit me. It's nobody's fault that this pandemic has hit, but it really isn't the students' fault, the children's fault. And so I have to kind of say what Jenny was saying. There were some members of the board that really reached out to me, and instead of putting up their hands and saying no, they came and they said, well, what about this and what about that? And they were really able to troubleshoot with me, and I really appreciate them, and thinking outside the box, and not just saying no, and and they did really well. So thank you to those who reached out to me, and it's a yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mrs. Stahl?
Well, I'd like to thank the committee and everyone who worked on it. I know you worked really hard. I'd also like to thank you for the changes that you made today, and I really like them. But in all honesty, because of the circumstances of financial and the way it is now, I have to vote no for number 7. And also number 11, I think that's an outrageous amount. Number 11 is an outrageous amount. So yes to everything except 7 and 11. But thank you all for the hard work that you did. And I'm so sorry that I feel I can't vote for it, but it's due to the taxes. I pointed that to us.
Okay. Mr. D'Agostino?
Yes to all.
Okay, motion carries.
Amen.
Under special services, I'd like to move items 1 through 4.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Steele. Looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mrs. Steele. All right. Any discussion? Special services. All right. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Steele?
Yeah.
Mrs. Stahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Hayden?
Yes.
Mr. Giuliano?
Yes.
Mr. Nuss?
Yes.
Mrs. Ranzan?
Yes.
Mrs. Whitty? Mrs. Whitty?
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
Mr. D'Agostino?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Referring to the addendum, I'd like to move item number 1. Mrs. Riker, you have a modification, correct?
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, the last paragraph, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the expenditure of $11,825, replacing the number that was there, that was in your packet. Everything else stays the same.
All right. Thank you.
I'll make
Looking
a
for a
motion.
motion. Thank you, Mrs. Craig. Looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Ranzan. And discussion on the addendum. All right. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Craig?
Yes.
And let's not forget the discussion of abstaining on, you have a conflict on the addendum.
Yeah, I can't. Sorry.
Okay, Mrs. Craig.
So wait, I have a
I
question.
think-
She made a motion. Is that okay?
Change it
yeah.
if you have to.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, great.
She
Okay,
just has
I
to vote.
abstain.
Okay. Mrs. Ranzan,
Yes.
Mr. Hayden, Mr. Hayden?
Mr. Hayden appears to be frozen.
I heard.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Everybody was just frozen.
Oh, here he is. Mr. Hayden?
There he is.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
back.
Okay. Mr.
Yes,
Hayden?
yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm doing the roll call for the finance addendum. Okay,
I
thank you.
understand.
Yes? Okay, Mr. Giuliano?
Yes.
Mr. Nuss?
Yes. Oh, I have to abstain, right?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that
Mrs.
too.
Steele?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoll?
Yes.
Did you want to abstain too, Mrs. Stoll,
Um,
on the addendum?
No, I thought we established that, no?
well, I could,
Doesn't really matter either way.
We have the majority.
Yeah.
yeah, I
If
guess
you
we
don't
could,
feel comfortable, you should recuse.
Right.
okay, then to
So you
avoid,
want to, Mrs. Stoll, you want to abstain?
yes, to avoid any
Okay.
problems.
Mrs. Whitty?
Abstain.
Mr. D'Agostino?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
All right. We will move on at this time to unfinished business. Does anyone on the board have any unfinished business they would like to discuss?
I don't know if this,
I just had one.
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Georgiana.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if it's unfinished business or not, but I was just concerned on, do we have any plans on what we're doing for the younger students that maybe don't have older siblings and the parents may not know how to help them with their homework if we have to keep this going on the way it is now?
Yeah, so two of the areas that we've gotten some feedback on were, one, some people at the Lawrence School age level actually prefer paper packets of materials as opposed to using a Chromebook. So we made those readily available to folks. The other thing is that I believe instructional staff was already approved for some family nights. And why we may not be able to have family nights in a traditional sense, I'm exploring how we could best utilize this medium to offer family nights, maybe shifting gears from the traditional math and language arts to more towards math and language arts in the context of, COVID-19 remote home instruction. So those are two things that kind of jump out at me for that. But, as I think in my conversations with you and a number of other folks, even at home, they're just some extraordinary times that we're going to learn and grow from, and then prepare for. Hopefully it doesn't come to it, but we'll have to enhance the process overall. Should this continue beyond summer?
Mike, I have a quick question. The survey that went out, how is the response from the families? Did you get a decent
Yeah,
response?
so I mean, I anticipate sharing those with the board in a weekly update. Friday, early Monday, we did a couple of blasts to try to get the response rate up. So at last check, we were about 350, which gives you, a nice overall picture of trends. And we asked a number of different categories like, forgive me as I recollect, workload. Do you have routines at home? What's your child's preferences for learning? Some feedback anecdotally on grading. So in short, I'd like to share the entire detailed process with you and present out May.
The other thing that I wanted to get the board's opinion on, and everything's been turned upside down, obviously, within the past month. And, I think part of the reason why there may have not been the communication is because we've all been isolating. What is everyone's thoughts on going forward, maybe changing our meeting structure where we're all together, at least for the end of the, thoughts on that?
Can you just repeat, Mr. Nuss, can you repeat your last statements? Because you just got cut off.
I was just wondering what people's thoughts were on going back to the, I think it's
Committee of the Whole
for the next couple of months versus the, the little committees. I'm just looking for feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I'm curious what everyone else would think.
I think just for the budget committee, we should do committee as a whole. The rest of them should stay separate.
I like Megan's idea.
The budget committee seems to be the only issue with people reaching out and connecting.
I agree with Mrs. Ranzan. That
well, I think there's also issues with the policy committee. I think there's issues there. There's only so many things that we can circumcede. There's issues that are beyond our purview that are not the members. That the jobs don't belong to the board members. They belong to the superintendent. And I think until all the board members understand their job title, that's a bigger issue.
Mr. Hyden, thank you, Mrs. Craig.
Board or not?
Did you want to do a work session, Mrs. Craig?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know.
It's okay.
I'll have to get back to you on that.
No problem, Mr. Hayden.
Yeah, Mr. D'Agostino, I would appreciate it if we could continue the way we are because we get much more information and we're heading towards trying times. I think we should also create a committee for this crisis and how we're going to recover from it.
I agree.
I think that we.
I agree. I like that. I love that.
And I think that maybe all of the people with all the committees need to start communicating better together in this time of crisis so that we can act as a unified force on behalf of the entire community. And like I said, we need somebody or a group of people, an equity. I don't think we get enough as a committee of the whole. I really don't. I mean, we had discussions last week. We had our committee for buildings and grounds, and we had to stop because the next committee was going to start. So we had an hour's worth of information to share. I think that the curriculum committee probably has more than that. The budget committee, even more than that. And to put it all together, it gets watered down.
It's fine. I just wanted people's thoughts. They all make sense.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of us are stuck home, so maybe we want to meet some people a couple times a month.
I just feel like the budget, that's the only one that I would like to meet as a whole. With the
I
board.
agree.
That's behind us now, and hopefully by the time the budget comes around next year, it'll be a better process with everybody involved. I agree.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I just want to echo one of the statements by Mr. Hayden. I don't know if anybody had a chance to thumb through or kind of give an overview of the, on something called, we put together the roadmap to reopening, which is just general kind of framework to follow. And one of the first steps was to form a committee of diverse perspectives, health, mental health, facilities, business, board, parent. So if it meets with the board's expectation, that's the next step that we'd like to take.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I'd like to echo Bob on this one. I think Bob's recommendation on this, when it comes to the road to reopening, I think it should be the board as an entirety. Because we all come with different perspectives, and I think we should reach out to the community and then decipher it amongst ourselves on how we can bring in the community to have different ideas. But I think for reopening, it should be the board as a whole, because we all bring different perspectives on how to do this.
I agree.
I would also like to bring in like maybe the nurses or something in the health,
Exactly.
the health area where they know more about the medical issues and, maybe more of the safety, temperature taking and stuff like that. I'd like to have nurses.
I already invited them.
Good.
Is it
And,
possible?
Yes, Mr.
We
Hyden.
also have Dr. Markle, who's our district physician, who'll be, extremely knowledgeable in providing assistance.
Thank you, Mr.
Is it
Hyden.
possible for the? I'm sorry. Is it possible for the standing committees to meet prior to the entire board to discuss the road back, so that they can discuss the individual issues that are are specific to their areas of expertise?
Well, do we have a standing committee for that?
I think what Mr. Hyden.
Curriculum, facilities, he's referring to. So you can come with specific ideas to the table that are unique to that area.
Yeah. What Mr. Hyden is suggesting is that we would all have all of our committee meetings prior to a meeting as a whole,
And if
so
you
we
get-
can talk.
If you get an opportunity to thumb through that document, that it's actually broken down, that would fit very nicely with committees prior to a whole group meeting.
And New Jersey school boards also sent out a survey to board members that touched on a lot of different things related to the road back. If everybody took a look at that, while they're quarantining at home or sheltering in place, it might be helpful to look at that stuff.
Agreed.
All great ideas. Let's implement those. Does anyone have any other unfinished business that they would like to discuss?
I have.
I just want to say to Mike and Christina that you guys have done a superstar job. I can't imagine what you guys are going through. It's unprecedented times. To my fellow board members, I thank you all for coming up with great ideas, for broaching, the gap. But to Mike and Christina, my hats are off to you, because this is unprecedented times and you did it phenomenally. So my hat's off to you and my greatest thanks.
Thank you. We have an opportunity. I got 2 more audience comments came in. And forget me.
Should we wait till audience remarks, Mr. Gall?
Yeah, I couldn't recall if we had gotten
Bob had a comment.
No. Yes, Mr. Hyden, did you have another comment?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry, I thought you did.
Yeah, and I would like to echo Mrs. Craig's sentiments. Again, that this board is always very hardworking, and though we don't always agree on everything, it would be pointless if we did. And I appreciate all the perspectives that you all have to bring to the table. Thank you to Mrs. Riker, Mr. Gall, to the staff for everything they're doing for the students. And I think hopefully we're going to all get through this very soon. And I know we're going to get through it together. So it's again, whether you voted yes or whether you voted no, whether you agreed or you didn't. I know we're all here for the right reasons and respect each other.
I would like to thank the teachers that are kind of on the front line. I'm probably because I am one. I know what they're going through, and I've heard some really great things that have been happening through Google Meets and scavenger hunts and just trying to reach their kids, worrying about the social emotional issues. I just want to thank the teachers for, kind of not knowing what was happening on Friday and then starting on Monday and not skipping a beat. So I want to thank them.
Agreed, Colleen. Agreed. And I see it through Skylar's stuff. They're doing a phenomenal job. Frustrated, tired, a lot of not knowing what's coming next. And the kids don't either. The kids are frustrated. But I have to give my hats off to everybody that's literally charting unprecedented times. So my hats off to all of us. I think we've done a great job. And our district has always come through. It's phenomenal.
I just want to expand a little bit on Mrs. Ranzan, not only, the staff that we work with, but, I think as a society, we've gained a whole new perspective or appreciation for our first responders and our EMTs and people on the front lines. And I know many of you personally have those folks. I've either been one yourself or have them in your family. I know, you've been candid and shared with me what's going on and what they're exposed to. And also, I think society is going to have a new appreciation for, new perspective on, who are our most critical folks. And they're not, I don't want to take anything away from people who achieve tremendous success, but they're not necessarily your movie stars and your sports athletes, but they're the folks on the front lines and, farmers providing our food and produce and, grocery store folks who are ensuring that we get food and an adequate food supply.
With a smile on their faces.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Megan?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
As a district, I know you
Went
all.
to Acme today, Megan, and they were phenomenal. I was in Acme today, and they were absolutely outstanding.
And Weiss, right? And Weiss.
And Weiss.
And Weiss, which
Okay,
is
and
still-
Weiss, but I was in Acme today, and they were phenomenal, with
Yeah.
a smile on their face and good.
I think all the
Good stuff.
cashiers and the grocery store workers and stuff in all the stores, no matter which one it is, are doing the best that they can in the circumstances that we have to try to protect themselves and also protect the customers too.
Yeah.
So everyone's doing a good job there.
That's right.
I also
Amen.
want to give a shout out
Amen.
to. I'm sorry. I just wanted to give a shout out to not only Mrs. Reiger's team, but Mr. Kronsky and his team. He's constantly running around with the tech stuff, and he's got these devices all interconnected and intertwined. And I know he's somewhere in the building laughing at me, but I know you all appreciate what he does.
I need to ask one question.
Yes.
I really appreciate what the teachers do now more than ever, and I want to know what the number is to call for a substitute for tomorrow.
Let me know, because I need a substitute.
My wife asked me to expel my own children yesterday.
I would like to
All right.
thank Ms. Riker again for handing out the free and reduced lunch to all the students to ensure they are getting breakfast
Yeah.
and lunch every single day. Thank you so much for doing that for our community.
Yeah, and moving your.
Thank
That is above and beyond the call of duty. So thank you,
Yep.
Mrs. Riker.
And I think we're the only
Thank you.
community doing it too.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And
Thank you so
I'd
much.
also like to, if I could, I'd like to thank Mrs. Steele for assisting with that process in donating the bags that I use every day. They are so helpful, and I don't know what I would do without them. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
That's
Meg.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. No, this is I think we're saying everything is what Mr. Gulf said is we're learning so much, but I think the students too are learning so much about the world and how important family is, and not to take for granted the hangouts they have with their friends and the things that they had so readily that they maybe can't find, like toilet paper now, and so just as much as they're learning in the classroom, I think they're becoming stronger young adults because of the situation. And again, it's great to see the board appreciating one another and everybody involved. And I know Mr. Kronsky's never been busier, so that's for sure. We appreciate him.
I give him a lot of credit for what he has to do.
I mean, I'm a millennial, and I'm uncomfortable with all the technology, and so I can't imagine. No, that's not a joke on anybody's age, by the way. All right, so let's move on to new business. Does anyone on the board have any new business they would like to discuss?
I have other things to discuss. There's some kind of business.
Sure.
With the resolution that we just passed and everything, of course, I was going to say yes to that. But while we have a lawyer with us, isn't it currently New Jersey law that is already requires municipalities to pay the schools? I mean, could we be in trouble with this, or isn't the law that the municipalities have to pay us, or?
I'd have to look into that and get back to you as to the current status.
And Mrs. Riker, you might have do you have some information about that?
Well, right now the municipalities do need to pay us, but there is this pending legislation that would give them the leeway to not to delay those payments, which would, we went through the slide, that's 60% of our revenue. That's or greater than 60%, that would be an issue. So New Jersey school boards recommended that we pass this resolution and it forwarded to the various different people listed to try to give them the notion that would be a tremendous hardship on the school district. So this is just saying that we oppose that legislation.
Right. I understand it, but I thought so far right now we're still safe because of the law, right?
Yes, but if this gets through, that would be an issue, and that they would have the ability to delay the payments. So this is just expressing the board's displeasure, and that was sent out to all the school districts, in the state from New Jersey School Board. So we're not the only ones that passed that resolution.
Correct. Elmwood Park passed it yesterday as well. So it's a growing movement. I believe Jefferson did as well.
Right. Another question. Do we have an outcome as to whether or not we need to pay like the vendors for I don't know, like an example of the bus companies of the buses that we don't own, but we have contracted with like maybe some other bus companies? Is there an outcome on that yet?
Currently, the law requires that those contracts continue, but I believe there's other legislation that's also being proposed that would provide some exemptions or leeway as well. So, but as of now, where the law currently stands, the mandate is you have to continue paying.
Okay. And I'm by no means trying to take anything away from Mrs. Riker at all. However, there's a lot of laws that are changing, a lot of different things that are going on. And I think that, the social distancing pandemic thing isn't necessarily affecting the job that she would normally do. And especially with all this other stuff coming on, I think that, again, call me micromanaging, Jenny. I don't know, but I feel as though Christina's time could be spent better than passing lunches out. There's some, in a sense, idle people that could possibly be in that place.
Christina, can I ask you a
So
question?
there's also an executive order in place that there are certain people that can't be around. So I think instead of worrying about Christina handing out lunches and us being grateful, that we really need to pay attention to the executive orders that are in place.
But
So,
Christine,
yeah, I'm going to go back to the micromanaging.
Christine, I just have a question. When you were passing out lunches, you kind of moved your office to the middle school, correct? I mean, you're not just standing around waiting for another person to pick up their lunch.
I didn't move my office there. What I do is I come here in the morning before I go over, and then when I go over there, I have my laptop, and I do work while I'm there. And then after I'm done handing lunches, I come back here and I finish my day, and I work at, I get all of my work done.
Thank you. And thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, guys. And thank you again, Mrs. Riker. You definitely people going above and beyond in our district. I thank you for it. Are there any other comments in new business that anyone would like to discuss?
If I could, I would just like to remind the board that we only have one meeting in May scheduled, and it is May 13th in order to do our hiring by that May 15th date, which has not been moved. So we still are required to do that. So I just wanted to remind you that board packets for that will be going home on May 8th, which would be
next Friday.
Yeah, so the meeting is Wednesday, May 13th, and that will be the only meeting of the month.
Thank you. All right, if there is no other, sorry, there is.
Just one last thing, since we're here. Is there any dates for any negotiation committee meetings at all?
The update I can have, right, Mrs. Riker, SWIA had sent us, they'd like to initiate a Zoom style meeting. I think mid-May we were putting something together.
Yeah, Mr. Jacoby is working to set up a date, and will get back to us.
Okay, but does the committee meet, like our committee meet before then, so we kind of have an idea of what thoughts are or whatever?
We would probably meet on that day with Mr. Giacobbe prior to. We would probably meet an hour. Normally, we would meet an hour before meeting with the first meeting is usually just a discussion of ground rules, and then you talk about a date for exchanging proposals.
Okay.
I have a question. May 13th is our meeting, and then the next one is June, the end of June. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's a long time, I think, go without a meeting. And I think like what Mr. Hayden was saying about coming together with some sort of committee
plan.
Like maybe we should think about having some special meeting between May 13th and the end of June. Just because I feel like the better that we're prepared for what's coming in September, if we're back in September, is better. I think if we wait until the end of June, I think it's the 8 ball.
I agree.
Absolutely agree. We don't know what's coming, so the better prepared we are, the better off we are. So absolutely agreed.
So if we're looking at the month of June, do we want to schedule a tentative meeting now that we're all available? I mean, I'm sure most of us are available, other than maybe Mrs. Steele and Mrs. Stoll. But do you want to look at like June 3rd or June 10th potentially?
I was thinking June 3rd.
And can it be like a special board meeting for like the committee like Mr. Hayden had brought up?
Correct. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Could I ask a question?
Let me ask a question. Are we scheduling this meeting as a work session meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
For June 3rd?
I think we all need to come together and have an detailed conversation based on what we're getting from the governor's office, from the DOE. What are our plans? Because they keep kicking it back to us. What are our plans? So June 3rd.
But Bob,
June 3rd works for me.
Bob, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, Mr. Hayden.
Yeah, I was wondering if we wanted to wait until we heard what the governor was going to say on the 15th before we made a hard decision as to when. Maybe we want it to be sooner, maybe we want it to be later, because I know he's most likely going to come up with that. And he may even tell us prior to May 15th. I don't know if we want to let that help us be a guide, or we just make a tentative meeting for June 3rd, whatever you guys think.
I'm thinking maybe a tentative.
Well, do you think it's fair, Bob, for the 27th then? Like if they do the 15th, we got to wrap our heads around it. So what if we did the 27th of May?
What's Memorial Day? Not that it really means anything anymore.
I think it's the 25th, I believe. I think it's the 25th.
Yeah, the 25th. The 25th.
So so is everyone available on the 27th as well?
I gotta check my calendar, Nick.
My dog said they'd be glad for me to be going on a meeting that day.
No, but I think that's a good idea, Bob, because we might get a jump start on what we got to do. I mean, June 3rd is only a week later, but we still have to follow the governor's guidelines. But we don't have to wait for him for us to contemplate a plan that if eventually he's going to say we're going to open. So what are we going to do to be most proactive, most protective, most, we could be the cutting edge. We could kind of step outside the box and be the best. It's just my thought.
So does the board want to do May 27th, and then I believe the board meeting is on June 24th. So if we did May 27th, potentially, if needed, we could keep open June 10th even, which is then we would be meeting every other week as another date in case we need to discuss things further. Is that the 27th and June 10th?
As long
something
I
we-
like
as
that.
long as it's on a Wednesday, I'm good. Some nights I'm staying at work till 7 or 8, so I'm not really available other than Wednesdays now.
Yeah,
I think it's
these
a
are
no-
Wednesdays.
Well,
All
I
right,
mean, we're
so
gonna
we
have
need to keep it on Wednesdays for Meg. So how about we do that? I think that's a great idea.
yeah, and I think we're gonna have to meet probably several more times. I mean, it probably
agree.
might run into
Mrs.
more
Stoll,
than
does that
every
work
other
for
week.
you?
Mr. Gall, Mrs. Riker, are you guys available on those dates?
Yes, the only question is I would need to advertise these, and not knowing what the governor's restrictions are going to be,
We should
I
know
would
May
probably have to
27th.
advertise them as virtual meetings, and then if we can change it, we can change it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I
I,
don't,
Okay.
I really don't think the meeting format's gonna change.
no, I don't either.
I don't either.
I agree.
Agreed. Agreed.
Mrs. Stoll, do those days work for you too?
I don't know, because it depends on my schedule. I don't know my schedule till like the Friday before.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you usually have Wednesdays off, Ms. Stoll?
No.
Okay,
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
okay.
Right.
All right.
What time do you get out? I mean, maybe we could meet a little later or something if it would make it easier on you.
Probably the later would be, yes, because they usually don't have me working too late.
So would like 8 o'clock be better than 7 p.m.? Mr. Stoll, if we,
No, we could
You
do
did what?
7. We could do 7, even maybe 6 if you wanted to, because I don't think they'll schedule me before that, after that.
so does 7 p.m. work for everybody then?
Yeah.
Normal time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll advertise those tomorrow. Well,
Thank
I'll send the advertisement tomorrow. It probably won't happen until Friday or Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Stoll.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments before we move on to audience remarks? All right, Mr. Gall, you said you had a couple more.
Yeah,
email?
we got a couple stragglers came in. We have one from Lisa Fahrenfeld, formerly Lisa Van Orden, SWE president. She just wanted to highlight, I apologize if you discussed this already and I missed it. What were your thoughts on the extended school year program? Will it be offered virtually if necessary? So I had a conversation with Mrs. Wilson. She is in support, and I think many of you have articulated over time that over summer is going to be a critical time for us to try to help assist students instructionally. So we're in supportive of it. I don't know, in an ideal fashion with the group of students that we service there, the in-person connection, is most appropriate, most beneficial. So that's the direction we would love to be in. And a lot of it is just contingent upon what we hear from the governor's office.
Are we open to making it later in the summer, like more attached to the beginning, if we're going back, like the beginning of September, like making it in August?
Yeah, I'm certainly open to it. I think she had that notion too.
Okay.
Before. So we're kind of in limbo again, where we're waiting to hear some more definitive information and what those restrictions are going to look like. We have another comment.
I'm sorry.
Sharon McAuliffe again. Thank you for all your hard work. The fact that many of you, while making your vote, included the taxpayers in your thoughts. We greatly appreciate that, as well as those who wanted more of a cut. Thank you for your open communication tonight. She indicates that, there's an appreciation for cordialness. And trying to keep those open lines of communications going. Once again, thank you. God bless. Ms. Cassie Jenks is questioning, what about online classroom tutorials, frequently asked questions, things of that nature that can be supportive of parents would be helpful. And I can blast that out in a link again, but Mr. Kronsky actually did his homework, where if you go to the technology portion of our website, there's a host of tutorial type options for things like Google Classroom, hubs, things of that nature. Another comment, Miss Jennifer Courtwright, Central School Road, 31 Central School Road, Wantage. She appreciates all the diligent work on the budget, understands the constraints the board is dealing with concerning the loss in state aid, thinks it's necessarily unreasonable to expect taxpayers, most of whom are out of work and some with limited income, to bear the burden of large increases. Is expressing a desire to, there's an uncertain future that lies ahead and how long this is going to continue, how hard it's going to hit the economy, and what the future budgets are going to look like if there's further aid loss. She's reinforcing that, please take into consideration that taxpayers can't be expected to shoulder the burden over that duration. Would like to have seen more cuts made now, but understands they'll inevitably follow. Is encouraging us to really look at the healthcare issue. That perceives that the claims are exorbitant. Is in questioning how much employees pay towards health benefits. Perhaps it needs to be increased. She's indicating. If the bank capital is not being used, will it be lost? I think Mrs. Riker clarified that was the case. There's a much more detailed response, but how much employees pay for health insurance is governed by was it Chapter 78, Mrs. Riker, and the phase-in of it's kind of predetermined for us by the state. She's indicated that if the bank cap is going to be lost, why aren't we using the whole thing? And I think it gets back to making those compromises and things like that in the budgeting process. And, as time goes on, are there any more positions that might be able to be changed to part-time? And those are, all things that the district will have to work through in the future in collaboration with the various labor organizations that we work with. As of this juncture, 9:58, I don't have any more audience remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Gall. So with the audience remarks being read, and I appreciate you again doing that. Thank you, Mr. Kronsky, for arranging that for us. I do not believe we have any need for an executive session. Is that correct, Mr. Gall?
I do not have any.
All right. So I will look for a motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make
I
a
make a
motion.
motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you, and all in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.